Welcome to another episode of Memorable Moments in Topeka History. I'm your host, Harold Gingrich. Country music has long been a part of the fabric of American culture, and that's especially true in rural communities. And Topeka, Indiana is no exception to that rule. But what many people don't know is that thanks to two brothers, Lester and Mose Shrock, Topeka had a fascinating connection to rising stars in country music. And it all started with Country Music Hall of Fame legend Red Foley. Now, while Mose passed away several years ago, his brother Lester still lives in the area, still plays music, and he told me the story of how it all began. It was about 1956, and the Shrock brothers, Mose and Lester, they were still a couple of Amish boys. But they had a passion for country music, and they had the musical talent to go with it. They called themselves Mose Shrock and the Blue Valley Boys. It featured Mose singing lead and playing his vintage 1795 fiddle. Lester was on the dobro, which is a resonator guitar, early forerunner to the steel guitars that we know today. Elmer Shrock played the bass fiddle, and Yum Yum, Emmanuel Miller, was on the rhythm guitar. Well, 3 or 4 times a year, they would rent Sycamore Hall, and they'd put on a 2-hour country music show that always included a gospel music segment. They also featured a number of local groups, such as the Crusaders Quartet, and every performance was sold out. Lester loves to tell the story about the time that John Fry was selling tickets. He sold 520 tickets for one of the shows. Lester said, people kept coming and wanting tickets, and old Johnny just kept saying, come on in, there's plenty of room. Well, it turned out it was standing room only because Sycamore Hall only seated 410 people. Well, with a chuckle and a grin, Lester said, we didn't know what had been going on until later, but nobody complained. They obviously got their money's worth, and they thoroughly enjoyed the show. Well, the Nashville connection got started when Mose and Lester wrote to Red Foley at Jubilee USA, which was a popular show, and they invited him to Topeka. To their surprise, Foley accepted the invitation and agreed to come for $350, which would have been a sizable amount in the late 1950s. According to Lester, just as the performance was about to begin, Foley looked at them and said, what have I gotten myself into? Well, the Shrock brothers quickly reassured him and said, you just wait. The crowd's gonna love it. Well, love it they did. And so Red Foley, he loved it too. The future Country Music Hall of Fame legend felt right at home on Topeka's grand old stage. In fact, he came back to Topeka 4 or 5 more times before he passed away. More important, it was the beginning of a friendship that would last for the rest of Foley's life. There was a day that Foley showed up unannounced at Mose's home, which was in Morley, Michigan. Mose had been in declining health. And when he asked Foley how he found out about him, well, all Red would say is, I have my ways. It was a visit that Shrock and his family would treasure for a lifetime. Well, there was a wealth of musical talent here in the Topeka area. Pete Stauffer's 3 daughters called themselves the Hoosierettes, and they were among the wealth of local talent. Harry Smythe at Buck Lake Ranch in nearby Angola, Indiana, was so impressed with the trio that he offered to put them on the road. But because their family was Amish and for those religious reasons, the girls passed on the offer. But they were that good. The country cut-ups from across the line in Michigan were another local favorite. Their brand of bluegrass was just what the Amish young folks in the Topeka area were looking for, and they lined up to hear them. Loretta Iker of Sturgis also appeared on the Topeka stage numerous times, and it started when she was only 11 years old. But in her late teens, stage fright began to bother her. It bothered her so much that she often resorted to taking a shot or two of whiskey just to get the courage to go on stage. Well, in her final performance here in Topeka, Loretta and a friend turned to prayer instead of a shot of whiskey. She says that as she sang that song, Moody River, Loretta just said, the Holy Spirit came over me and the audience went wild. Afterwards, people came backstage for autographs and everything. I just laughed, she said. But I told the Lord that if he can do this for me with a country song, I'll only sing gospel music from now on. It was a powerful moment for her and for others. It should be noted that Buck Lake Ranch was one of the main stops for rising Nashville stars. And if they couldn't get booked into Buck Lake Ranch, there was now an option, a connection, in coming to Topeka. Well, there's no end to the stories about Topeka's country music jamborees. I love the one. George and Phyllis Philly were out one night and they were taking a walk downtown in Topeka. And they just stopped to listen to the music. It may have been the night that Crystal Gale and her sister Loretta Lynn came to town. I don't know for sure. But the story as I heard it goes like this. They stopped downtown to listen to the music and George leaned back against the door of the Farmers State Bank just to enjoy the music. But then he fell in. Obviously, Dana and Laura Greenwald, who cleaned the bank, had forgotten to lock the doors. They must have gone in the front door, and when they finished, they went out the back door and forgot to lock the bank. Well, this is Topeka, so it only took a phone call or two, and someone came down to lock the doors. Nothing in the bank was missing, and the oversight remained a secret for many years. Ann Stoltz told me the story of when little Jimmy Dickens came to town. Ernie Miller was an Amish boy from Shipshewana, and he played the bass for Jimmy Dickens. Ann worked at M&W Music at the time, and they handled ticket sales. Smoking wasn't allowed backstage at Sycamore Hall, but that didn't stop little Jimmy. Well, I don't know how the show went, but after the show, Dickens decided to head for the bar 2 doors down the street for an adult beverage. They refused to serve him at first because he looked like a kid in a cowboy hat. But it didn't take long to straighten things out. And according to all accounts, it didn't take long for Dickens to get good and drunk. That may have been his only trip to Topeka, but it was a memorable one, and it makes for a great story. My mother, Shirley Gingrich, worked at the ticket window. In fact, the ticket window is right here behind me. And she worked there, and that meant I got in free. Well, just a few months before Tex Ritter died, he put on a show here in Topeka. And I remember my mom telling me that the ticket sales were very, very disappointing. She was excited because she was going to get to see and hear this singing movie cowboy and a country music legend. But the Amish people, they were more excited about the local talent than the country music icon. They were just too young to know who Tex Ritter really was. Mose and Lester and the boys often stole the show with their wild costumes, slapstick humor. They were having fun, and so was the audience. It went without saying that musically, they could perform with the best of them. In 1959, Mose joined the U.S. Army and served as a medic and an ambulance driver in Germany. The Chamber of Commerce here in town began sponsoring the shows, bringing in such acts like Nancy Lee and the Hilltoppers, who were a mainstay on WOWO radio out of Fort Wayne, the Hoosier Hop, and the Little Red Barn. Topeka native Fred Miller and the Ramblers from Graybill, Indiana, frequently highlighted the bill over the years. Country music shows continued until the late 1960s. Then in April of 1980, the grand old hall fell victim to the wrecking ball. Today in its place stands the Save-A-Lot grocery store. But for the hundreds of people who came and loved the shows, the music still lingers in their hearts, as do the memories of a host of Nashville stars, Mose Shrock and the Blue Valley Boys, the Country Cut-Ups, the Hoosierettes, and countless others playing to a packed house in iconic Sycamore Hall. Those were certainly memorable moments in Topeka history. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you'll hit the like button here and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join us again next time when we take another look at a memorable moment in Topeka history.